Welcome to the Wisdom of the Body Summit, an online event to align with your body's intelligence for healing, optimal living, and spiritual awakening. Brought to you by Sounds True. Throughout this summit, 32 experts will share practical tools and breakthrough insights that have emerged from the convergence of science and time-honored perspectives from the world's spiritual traditions. As we learn to recognize and honor the incredible wealth of knowledge that lies within our bodies, we can begin to listen and attend to ourselves more fully, opening a doorway to greater health and well-being. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome author, clinical psychologist, and yogic scholar Richard Miller. As the founder, executive director, and president of the board of directors at the iRest Institute, I'm excited to invite Richard to share his presentation titled, Our Body as Sacred Windows to the Infinite. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you. Delightful to be here with you today. So I'd love to leap in to the PowerPoint if I could. Maybe I could bring up the first slide of the PowerPoint as we begin to inquire into how do I envision the body as a sacred window or as a sacred mirror that we can use to reflect both our health and well-being, but also awakening to what I would say is our essential nature. I like to think of the practices of what I call body sensing, which I'm going to be talking about today, as awakening the intelligence that lives in our body, in every cell, in every atom and molecule. And that this intelligence is what informs and directs our life. So in our essential beingness, in the ways we're interacting both with ourselves, in our relationships, how we're working in the world, serving, we might say. Body sensing really is a primary activity we can engage all day long. I like to say 24/7, 365, so all day long, all year long. That's really helping us embody our innate humanness and all of the potential we have as an individuated, authentic, and spontaneous human being. But it's also here to serve as a portal, as a window, we could say, to help us understand the deeper essential nature. This ineffableness, I like to say, something that is indescribable. It's like a mystery that has given birth to the entire cosmos and each one of us. So we want to understand that it's tremendously vital to learn how to listen to the body. I think of all the messengers that we're receiving all day long through sensations, feelings, emotions, our thoughts, images, memories, our experiences. These are all messengers that when we're really sensitive to them, they help us on our way. They act as guides. So it's really important to understand practices and ways of being that can help us stay in touch or in tune with these dynamic messengers that live within our body. We're wanting to then use them to both establish a deep sense of well-being. Also, if we're in need of healing of some way, we can use them to help us understand how to heal the body. And we can use them with right understanding as pointers to this ineffable mystery that underlies all of life. In this second slide, I'm looking at body approaches like body sensing, which comes from a tantric Kashmir approach, which I've learned years ago from different teachers that I've studied with both here in the United States, in Europe, as well as in India. These are really simple practices for enhancing listening, our sense of interconnectedness, both with ourself and the world around us, and as I said, awakening and embodying our essential nature. It's important to understand that we can arrive at an inner sense of well-being that I like to refer to as indestructible, unchanging, that brings a deep sense of peace, a deep sense of equanimity, no matter what other state of consciousness we may be experiencing. This is important to understand, that there's an aspect within all of us that we're awakening here that is present amidst any circumstance, any situation, any emotion or feeling state we may be experiencing. So we're needing to learn how, we might say, to discriminate between the changing aspects of life, our thoughts, our desires, our emotions, our changing experiences, and something that's here that's unchanging, that allows us to perceive and respond to these changing circumstances without being in touch with this deeper core aspect of unchangingness. We will feel ourselves constantly out of sorts, confused, in conflicts that we don't understand. By understanding and really developing a deep core feeling to this ineffable unchangingness within ourselves, we have the ability then to really meet all of our circumstances that are changing. In this next slide, I want to look at 3 primary modes of body sensing. Exteroception. This is our ability to perceive the so-called external world and environment around us by registering them as internal states within us. Proprioception is our ability to understand where our body is in time and space and in relationship to the environment, to others, and to ourself. And this third aspect, interoception, is an ability that's innate within all of us to detect, to identify, to interpret sensations, and to make predictions, and to act into the world based on internal physiological feedback mechanisms that are innate within all of us. These 3 aspects work together to give us a sense of where we are at any time, physically, psychologically, in relationship both to ourselves and to those around us and to our environment. So it's really important to have practices that work at each of these levels. Research is interesting when we look at people who are working with aspects of exteroception, proprioception, or interoception. Studies have shown that when a person works with these different elements, say in different practices or in meditation, they tend to develop a heightened sensitivity to the body, but only to the degree that they focus on particular areas within their body. In other words, paying attention to a particular area in the body doesn't necessarily generalize to the rest of the body. So we need practices that I would say are going to allow us to grow a sensitivity to our entire body. We might say to every molecule, every cell, every bone, every muscle, every sinew, because they're all sending us information. The more information we can receive, the more information we can collate, the better our response is going to be both within ourselves and to others. Research also shows that when we're under stress or duress, when people have experienced some traumatic event in their life, whether it's illness, accident, an act of war, but it also could be the stresses that come from getting married, buying a new house, or moving. these stresses can disconnect us from our body, from our internal environment when we're battling or trying to understand or overcome the stresses that we're under. We're working with them. Body sensing then is very important, that we have this heightened sensitivity that allows us to navigate both the stresses and traumas we may experience in life and remain connected to ourself. As I said, stresses and traumas tend to disconnect from ourself. Body sensing is designed to keep us connected and interconnected, no matter what stresses or traumas we may be facing. I've had the personal privilege, both as a psychologist and as a teacher of meditation, to travel worldwide and work with people who've experienced tremendous stresses or traumas in their life, and to help them understand how body sensing can help them both heal and regain a sense of interconnectedness to themselves and recapture this unchanging sense of well-being through these very simple practices that in a little while I'd like to engage you into some very simple forms of body sensing. So in this next slide, it talks about how we're using body sensing to awaken these internal body cues at ever subtler dimensions within our body. We want to develop and enhance our ability to hear these messengers, these internal body cues, to listen to them, to reflect on them, and to understand how to respond to them so that we can have this sense of well-being wherever we are and however we are. In a moment, I want to talk about neuroscience that is showing how these different aspects of body sensing, exteroception, proprioception, and specifically, or more importantly, interoception, how neuroscience is showing the effect this can have on our entire nervous system, where we're learning how to restore a deep sense of present-centeredness, a deep sense of equanimity wherever and however we are. This is also helping us restore a sense of resilience, because research has also shown that people who develop sensitivity at an interoceptive level, this to internal states of physiology and psychology, they have a better sense of self-regulation. What does that mean? It means whatever circumstance they're experiencing, they have the ability to meet it and respond to it better than people who have a weaker or not as highly developed sense of interoceptive sensitivity. It's also interesting, research has shown that people who have an ability to sense the body at subtle levels, they have a lower threshold to what we might say pain or discomfort impulses in the body, but a higher threshold to pain. So what does that mean? They're able to detect sooner at subtler levels incoming signals that they can respond to, such as discomfort or pain. Other people who aren't as sensitive, those messengers are going to have to get louder and louder in the body before they hear them and are able to respond. People who have a heightened interoceptive responsiveness also have a higher threshold to pain. They're able to tolerate and be with levels of discomfort, levels of distress that people who don't have this ability are unable or have more difficulty working with stresses that are coming in. So there are a lot of benefits to developing a heightened sense of ability to detect these subtle cues that are coming through our body, these interoceptive cues. So before I jump into the neuroscience in this next slide, I want to look at theory of mind, because interoceptive abilities are hooked into what's called theory of mind. Theory of mind talks about our ability to attribute both to ourself and to others, different physical and mental states. We have within us, as our next slide shows, mirror neurons, which we've come to appreciate, that help us understand or have empathy with another. Theory of mind and mirror neurons kind of work together to help us both appreciate and understand the different sensations, beliefs, desires, intentions, emotions, thoughts that we're having, but also to appreciate those that others are having. Theory of mind and motor neurons theory also point out that we're also able to have the ability to understand that others' behaviors and perspectives are different than ours. This is very important as we move through our social interactions, where we can learn skills of how to listen, how to hear another, how to respond to another as a unique human being that's different from us, has different perspectives and views, and that we can appreciate within ourselves how our views and perspectives are different. This is important so that when we enter into issues of difficulty or challenges in our interpersonal relationships, we can have the skills to both listen to our own body cues, but also to hear and respond to the cues of those around us. If we're not sensitive at these two levels, we can misread another who is in front of us trying to convey something of importance to us. I like to think that besides our basic needs for food, shelter, safety, clothing, we have 4 other basic needs: to be seen, to be heard, to have a sense of connection, and a sense of belonging. We need to appreciate that all the people around us have these needs as well. If it's true that there is an underlying ineffable mystery that's given birth to the entire cosmos, to each one of us, then each of us as human beings and everything around us, we might say, are unique expressions of this underlying essence. From that perspective, we want to appreciate the uniqueness of every individual we're with and every unique object we come in contact with, whether it's a flower, a tree, a rock, a mountain, or another human being or an animal, and appreciate that they have the same needs we do: to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel connected, and to have this sense of belonging. Interoceptive sensitivity and body sensing practices, as I engage them and teach them, are designed, like theory of mind, to help us appreciate and communicate with others around us so that we can navigate difficulties and conflicts without the necessity of going to war. In other words, we continue to feel our interconnectedness, our interbelongingness when we're with whatever we're with or whomever we're with. In this way, they'll feel heard and seen and connected with. We'll feel seen, heard, and connected with. And through this, we can navigate even the most challenging of circumstances. My own belief here is that if everybody had this sensitivity and appreciation for each person that they came in contact with as a unique individual with these basic needs, we would be interested in solving our problems politically, economically, socially, culturally, rather than going to war, as what seems to happen when people don't feel seen or heard. So let's look then briefly at what's happening in neuroscience. Over the last 2 decades, as I've watched the research grow and have been involved now myself in over 35 research projects, I've come to appreciate how neuroscience is adding to our understanding of what's happening when we're doing practices like meditation and what I'm calling interoceptive body sensing. If we look at this first slide, we can see that we have three major networks, which you may or may not be familiar with. The default network, when we're just basically in a resting state, when people were put into an MRI and actually told to do nothing while they were tuning the machine, but in fact, they were studying them as they were doing nothing, so-called nothing. What they came to see that people engaged in what we call recursive thinking, often negative recursive thoughts about themselves, self-judgments, self-depreciations, regrets, anticipations, regrets about the past, and hopes about the future. They also came to understand how the default network is where we grow our sense of self as a separate entity from other separate human beings or objects around us. It's also where we have encoded within us or hardwired into us for survival a negativity bias where we're more prone to mistake a stick for a snake so that we don't step inadvertently on a snake thinking it's a stick or eat the wrong berry. The default network unconsciously is making, we might say, millions of evaluations per second as we're walking towards another human being. We're making all sorts of evaluations through this default network. For instance, are we going to enjoy a wonderful lunch together today? Or are you going to be eating me for lunch? So it's really hooked into long-term survival, how we navigate our social relationships and our environment. The second network, the dorsal attention, is where we develop a sense of attention as a movement and develop a sense of concentration. If you take a moment and you unhook your attention from this presentation and just set it free, just watch for a moment what attention, when you don't try to attend to everything or anything, does. You can quickly see how it'll move to an image or to a sensation, then to a thought, might move to an emotion. In other words, the attention network for survival is constantly in motion. It's evaluating our environment for threats. It's designed, along with the default network, to keep us safe and to understand threats that may be coming into our environment. This third network, the control network, this is mediating between these two, the default and the attention network, again, as a survival mechanism to keep us moving in the world as safely as we can. If we look at the next slide, we can see how these three networks, while they're independent, they're also highly interrelated. This way, if we were to suffer accident or injury or a tumor, we could make up this deficit. I've worked with a fellow who was in a major accident, lost a huge part of his brain about the size of his fist in his right upper frontal cortex. Yet if you were to meet him today, you wouldn't know, except for the scar, that he had anything going on in his brain other than your brain or my brain, how we look. So the body is able to make up for incredible trauma, accidents, illnesses by having this highly interrelated sense of these three different networks. It's the fourth network in the next slide, though, that truly interested me. In deep meditation, when people were asked to either do one of two things, have an open, unfocused awareness. In other words, they're simply asked to abide as awareness, not focus on any particular object or sound. Or when they were given concentration meditation, such as body sensing, to focus on a particular sound or body sensation, they activated what we've come to know as the defocusing network, or what I like to call the present-centered network. What we see is as we go into meditation states, as we engage in what I call body sensing practices, we have a shift out of our default kind of negativity bias, these negative recursive thinking loops, and we enter into a whole new domain where we can access creative insight that we otherwise can't when we're only held hostage by the default and control networks. We see high activation of what we call gamma. This has been linked to insight. And we see as people go into meditation, even naive meditators who have never really been meditating much, as well as advanced meditators, as they enter into this present-centered network, high-level gamma is activated, and there's the possibility of gaining insight into issues we otherwise have difficulty navigating. Dan Siegel coined the wonderful word, we're open to infinite possibility as we enter into this present-centered network. Interestingly, in deep sleep and in states of REM, we also enter into this present-centered network. And I've come to appreciate how meditation and different forms of body sensing, when they're done correctly, can give us access to the same states we get when we're in deep sleep. Because during REM in the evening, our brain is actually culling out challenging circumstances and helping us understand insights that when we wake up in the morning, we might know how to navigate a particular crisis or difficulty we've been experiencing. That's why it's very important to get healthy sleep patterns so that we can get enough REM so that we can work through problems and integrate emotions that otherwise we can't. This is one of the reasons why people coming back from, say, tremendous trauma, wartime activities, abusive circumstances, their nervous system is always activated, and at night when they go to sleep, they don't actually go into REM the way you or I might. So they can't gain access to these portals for healing and for a higher integration of emotions that they're struggling with. Body sensing, different types of meditation can help us heal during the daytime when we engage these practices, and when we go to sleep, get good night's sleep. So in this next slide on neuroscience, we see how these activities of body sensing and meditation can help us deactivate our default network, help us step out of negative self-referencing thoughts, and step in and activate our present-centered network, which we can do both when we're doing these practices, say in a sitting or a standing or a walking position, or we can learn how to access them all day long once we become sensitive to what the present-centered network really feels like when it's engaged. Because what we see is, if I go back to the previous slide, when we're in this present-centered network, it gives rise to tremendous feelings of equanimity and well-being. We can come to slowly appreciate that these, what seem to come and go, actually have an underlying core to them that's unchanging. We can actually learn to access, activate, and remain ensconced in all day long deep states of equanimity and well-being, no matter, again, the distress which we may be experiencing. So in this next slide on body sensing, I want to look at these different resources and activations I'm talking about. So during body sensing, we can deactivate the default network. Interestingly, what can happen then, just like it can happen in deep sleep, we begin to rewire into more effective strategies that we can utilize during our daily life. It also brings in this deep inner sense of unchanging well-being. It heightens our sense of resilience, and it gives rise to deep sense of self-regulation, where we know how to navigate our emotions and our thoughts. It activates this present-centered network. It also develops heightened sense of focusing and control. And it opens us to an ability to really, what I call proactively hear, listen, respond to each moment, both with ourselves and with the people around us. This sense of being seen, heard, connected, and belong, it heightens these abilities. When we're in deep present-centeredness, actually, it turns on feel-good hormones like GABA, serotonin, oxytocin. And if you don't understand these, if I were to take a spray bottle of oxytocin and spray it in the room where you are right now, you would start to have internal feelings of well-being and equanimity. These feel-good hormones really help us develop these qualities, and that we can carry with us all day long. In the next slide, I'm looking at how body sensing as a practice can help us repair these negative recursive thinking loops we can get caught in, help us regulate our brain, our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. A regulated para and sympathetic nervous system has the ability to have greater resilience when we're under stress. So when the sympathetic nervous system of fight, flight, or flee gets activated, the parasympathetic nervous system can kick in, activate, and help restore and balance a sense of equanimity. At the same time, if we've undergoing great stress, the death of a loved one, we might be experiencing a sense of discomfort or lack of joy or grief in our life, where the parasympathetic can get overstimulated. We want that sympathetic nervous system to equally have the ability to kick in and activate and help restore a sense of balance. So body sensing is helping develop these two parts of our vagal nervous system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, to remain in harmony with one another, to keep a sense of balance, whatever we're undergoing. Research also shows that body sensing and forms of meditation, which body sensing is for me, helps us regain restful sleep. It's a tremendous stress reducer, and it heightens mental acuity and emotional and cognitive intelligence within ourselves. I've worked with, again, a lot of people who've suffered trauma, and the first thing they'll say after their first deep body sensing practice is they got their first good night's sleep since they underwent the trauma that they experienced in their life. This next slide, I want to really emphasize these qualities of equanimity, well-being, resilience, self-regulation. They're innate within us. We're hardwired for these possibilities. We just need to possess the understanding of how to activate these activities that will help us grow, for instance, new neural connections within our body and our mind, and rewire our circuitry in favor of interoception, this ability to sense subtle cues or messengers that are helping us stay on our track of health, well-being, and awakening. So there are different steps to body sensing. This next slide, I go into some of them. We always want to start whatever journey we're undergoing, whether it's setting out on an activity in our daily life, getting married, starting a meditation practice, or engaging in a practice of body sensing. We want to affirm a deep intention. And part of that intention is to move from thinking to sensing. Our thinking mind is in the past. It only knows the past. Sensing is in the immediacy of the moment, where we can gain access to these deep cues and then learn how to respond to them. The second thing I think is important is to connect to a deeper inner resource of well-being. There are practices, and one which I'll share today when we do the practice in a few minutes that can help us activate and restore this sense of deep well-being within ourselves so we can recognize it and learn how to nourish it all day long. This third aspect is similar to the first, where we're welcoming the body as sensation. But to understand that when we shift from thinking to sensing and we really begin to sense the body in a way will feel at first localized as sensation, as a sensorial experience bounded by the structure of our skin. But if we stay with body sensing and sensation, it soon gives way to a deeper, more expansive sense about it, a field-like quality where the boundaries of our body begin to dissolve and we realize the body is actually a field of what I call radiance that extends infinitely in all directions, that gives rise to this fourth aspect, which is a shift from being a localized, structured, separate entity to being more spacious, open, and non-separate with the environment around us, where we can truly be open to all the incoming information, whether it's inside or outside. And the fifth aspect is where we're learning to take the practices, what I call off the mat and into the world. So we want to have practices that we're practicing in the comfort, say, of our own home or in a class, which is guided by a teacher. But we want to learn how to integrate them and take them into the world. As I said before, research shows that if we focus on one particular aspect, say, of proprioception, movement, say raising our arm or side bending, it awakens certain sensations, but it doesn't generalize to the whole body. When we're on the mat, we want to develop a host of practices that awaken the innate intelligence throughout the entire body. And then we want to learn how to take those cues into the world with us. So as we're walking around, our whole body is responsive to our environment. Where many people may feel their gut or their heart, we want you to have access from your gut, your heart, your arms, your hands, your legs, your feet, your head, every part of your body. So let's turn into a particular practice of body sensing. In this next slide and the subsequent slides, I take you through these 5 different aspects, which I just explained. The first slide is talking about how we affirm an intention, how intentions are really important to help us nourish our activities that we're going to carry into the world. The second, connecting to our inner resource. And you'll get these slides as a part of this presentation. I'd like you to look at these more in depth. The third is welcoming the body as sensation. The fourth, learning how to respond to the emerging, not just sensations, but emotions and cognitions, thoughts, images, experiential qualities that are emerging in our body as we're doing body sensing, so we can become responsively sensitive to them. Interweaving this inner resource of well-being amidst the body sensing, which I'm going to do with you when we actually engage the practice in a few moments, and shifting out of this sense of being more of a localized presence to being a more open, spacious quality that we might call a quality of open-ended awareness, where we're not so much focusing on the individual objects that are arising, but on this vast sense of spaciousness itself, in which both our body and our mind and all others are arising. And this fifth, integrating body sensing into the worldly life 24/7, 365 days a year. So let's look at the actual practice. When I teach body sensing, I teach it both in static and dynamic positions, lying on the floor, lying on our back, on our sides, on our stomach, sitting on the floor, sitting in a chair, standing, walking around. I teach it in all possible forms: side bending, back bending, forward bending, twisting, inversions. Because when we're out in life, life tends to twist us into all sorts of positions. If we can actualize body sensing when we're practicing it into all these different body orientations, we can develop a tremendous facility of proprioception where we have access no matter how our body is oriented in space, whether we're right side up or upside down, whether we're lying on the ground or walking around, we can have access to these different cues that the body's sending us. For instance, one woman I worked with, when I put her into a more upside down, topsy-turvy position, she's able to sense a sensation in her kidneys, which then I asked her to go check it out with her doctor, and she found she was in an early stage of a kidney infection, which she hadn't been able to recognize when she was walking around, but it was only when she turned upside down. So I think it's important to engage practices that put us in all sorts of body positions where we get access to information. So take a moment, if you would, with your eyes open or closed. However you find yourself in this moment, sitting or lying down or walking around or driving in your car. With your eyes open or closed, whatever facilitates your ability to go in. Take a moment, let your senses open. Sounds, color or light or form coming in through your eyes or eyelids. The touch of air on your skin and sensations of warmth or coolness. Sensations where your body touches the surfaces that are giving support. And free your attention to wander through your entire body from crown to toes, shoulders to fingertips, welcoming sensations that are both deep inside the body and on the surface. And notice particular sensations that are calling your attention to them. They might be in a particular part of your body, your belly, your heart. Could be your head. But might you bring attention for a moment down into one of your hands, say your left hand, as if you were traveling down your shoulder, feeling your way into the hand and sensing your left hand from this left hand. And then let go of the concept hand or left and just welcome the different sensations that are present here without naming them as much as possible, setting thoughts free like helium balloons, and just welcoming the sensation. And notice how there's sensation, you might say, in the center of the palm, back of the hand, in the individual fingers. Now, when it feels right, let attention shift gently and slowly over to the opposite hand, feeling your way, not thinking, but just feeling your way. Welcoming now the sensations in this right hand, palm, back of the hand, fingers. Feeling this hand from within the hand, not through thinking, but more and more sensing. Then let attention equally divide so you feel both hands equally at the same time. Not from your thinking mind, but notice how you might begin to feel a subtle shift out of thinking, more down in towards your heart or belly. Feeling the hands, we might say, from the heart and from the hands. Now open attention again to sense the entire body and notice new sensations throughout the body that are now calling your attention to them. Then, not with your thinking mind, but feeling your way from your heart, feel over to the left side of the body. Watch how your eyes may move as you feel your way over to the left side. Then let the eyes soften and welcome all the sensations up and down the left side of the body. We want to take our time welcoming sensations in the left side of the head and face, jaw, neck, shoulder. Sensations of the natural heaviness or lightness in the arm and hand. Sensations as breath enters and leaves the body, the left side of the chest, belly. Left side of the pelvis and hip and leg, foot. Then to your capacity, see if you can sense the entire left side of the body all at the same moment, as if all the sensations came together. Then very carefully and gently, let sensation move over to the opposite side. Welcoming sensation along the left side of the head, face, neck. Shoulder, arm, hand. Chest and belly. Pelvis and hip. Leg and foot. And let all these sensations on this side of the body come together and welcome the entire side of the body all at once. Then bring these two sides of the body together, sensing the entire body all at once. And then let yourself move into the back of the body, sensing the entire back side of the body, the back of the head and neck, shoulders and back, sacrum and buttocks, back of the legs and feet. As before, now sense the entire backside of the body. Then let attention move into the front of the body and welcome sensations in the front of the face, jaw and neck, chest and belly, pelvis, front of the legs and feet. Now feel the entire back side of the body, the entire front side of the body, all at once. Now join these four quadrants, back of the body, front of the body, left and right sides, feeling them all at the same time as much as possible, freeing yourself from thinking. Welcome the shimmering, radiating, or vibrating qualities that are present. Then let attention move out in all directions equally, front, behind, left, right, below, above. So you feel how the body as sensation is not just local, but how it extends out as a field where the boundaries of the body may feel that they're dissolving, and we feel more our body as a field of radiance. And just sense this question. When you're just feeling this field, where is your sense of where am I? How we can feel we're both a localized quality of sensation, but where we have also this spacious openness about ourselves. And notice as you're doing this, when am I? When I'm just this quality of being. How the thinking mind tends to fall away and we enter into our more timeless nature. And this quality that you're accessing, which we might call a basic sense of just simply being. Does being need anything, or can you feel how something about yourself is outside of need, lack, is perfect just as it is? And how, as you remain as this quality of openness, sensitivity, how it's more and more deeply connecting you to yourself. And you also might say to the world around you. And notice the familiarity of this feeling. We all know it. We may not spend much time during our day nourishing it. And how it brings other qualities like peace or ease or equanimity or a sense of well-being with it. And how you might be able to recognize how these qualities can be present wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. And two more aspects of this moment of body sensing. Notice how all the different sensations, thoughts, emotions, sounds, how they're all coming and going, constantly changing. Sensing yourself as a witnessing presence, though, feel how something about yourself is unchanging as a quality of witnessing presence. That has both a localized aspect to it around your heart, but also is more like a field that encompasses everything that's arising within it. And notice how even this feeling of the witness is arising, we might say, in a vaster field of openness. We might call awareness. Or we could ask, what does awareness feel like when it's free of the objects arising in it? So take a moment and move between sensing, welcoming sensations, subtle emotions or feelings that are present, and shifting into this more spacious openness, which is actually activating your presence-centered network where you're open to insight. Notice how the body as sensation is arising in awareness, not separate. And if your eyes are closed, let yourself remain with these different qualities as the eyes open and close several times. If your eyes are open and you have the ability to close them, let the eyes close and open several times, integrating both the body as a radiant quality of sensation and this more open expansiveness of awareness. As we come back into the more talking part of this presentation in a few moments into some interaction between Christy and myself, keep sensing the body. When I'm teaching it, I don't do it as we're doing now in a more static position where we're just sitting or remaining quiet while we're opening to body sensations. I also teach it in dynamic movement. So we're learning how to activate different sensations in different movement forms like side bending or forward bending, back bending. But then coming back to a moment of stillness where we can really feel these different sensations that have been activated and released into our awareness. And by doing it this way, both dynamically and statically, we can learn to activate deeper and more subtle cues where we can have access to physical sensations, emotions, thoughts that we otherwise might not hear or perceive, that enables us to enact, we might say, at earlier or subtler ways in our life than we might otherwise be. Body sensing is something then we can carry with us all day long. I'm constantly sensing my body wherever I am, whoever I'm with, looking for these subtle cues as messengers that are helping me respond. So that rather than reacting, and even if a conditioned reaction is unfolding, we're able to access deeper, subtler cues that help us navigate a moment of reactive conditioning that's arising and not get caught in it, but learn how to be responsive to the situation and to the person we might be interacting with so we can navigate and communicate and keep the sense of being seen, heard, and connected both within ourselves and with the person we're interacting with. So just a moment of conclusion in the last slides. I think of body sensing as a meditative technology. When it's used correctly, it's really nourishing this innate capacity within ourselves for growing a sense of deep resiliency and well-being that we carry with us throughout our lifetime. I think of the body sensing approaches that I've learned as an owner's manual that we didn't receive when we were kids, that are really showing us how to navigate life in ways we might not have otherwise come to understand. But it's also a portal or a window to the deeper, infinite openness that we truly are, which we touched upon as we open into awareness. Body sensation is unfolding in the vaster openness of awareness. And as we're able to then situate ourselves in and as awareness and abide for periods of time, we might say free of the movements that are arising in awareness, as we're really able to settle back into being awareness, it opens us to a subtler dimension, this deeper, what I call essential nature or ineffable mystery that is beyond the thinking mind and yet something we can experience and that informs the rest of our life amidst all states we might find ourselves engaging in wherever we are and whomever we're with. And I love this last slide of this little girl being swung around, because for me, it's such a graphic picture of this indestructible well-being that we carry within us, that even when we're engaged in a very challenging or difficult situation, we still have access within to a sense of joy, unshakable peace and well-being that we bring with us into the moment, that again helps us navigate our circumstances. So I hope at some point you'll join me in some of these delicious practices that I've kind of touched on today through my teachings and teachers and my portal and my website. We offer access to these different practices. So I'd like to open this up back to Christy and see where we go from here.
Richard, that just brought up so many questions for me. I'm already like, overwhelmed at how I'm going to get them all in. When we were doing that practice or that exercise, I was noticing different emotions in different parts of my body. And as you continue to talk about how this practice can enable or empower us to work with emotions, I was thinking, okay, well, rather than associating my right side with maybe lighter or happier emotions, maybe this is just a reflection of where the energy is right now in that place in my body, and so not to hold on to it. Can you say a little bit about that? Because I also hear a lot of times people say that, we hold pain and depression in our heart and in our hips and trauma in various places in our body. Is it that it lodges there, or that it just is kind of traveling through?
The body is such a unique organism. It will store emotions when we're not able to process them in different parts of our body, that we then are asked later on when we'd say survive through a particular situation to come back, re-access them so we can thrive again. The mind, however, can fixate these sensations into a particular location. Whereas when we do body sensing, say with a particular emotion, we may first encounter it, as you said, in the heart or the belly or a particular area of the body. But as we let go of the thinking mind, which tends to hold it fixated in a particular location, we will, like sensation, realize emotion is energy that starts to expand. And I of exercises with emotions where we feel into where's the core center of this emotion, where is its outermost boundary or border, where it's very important with body sensing or emotional sensing, as you're talking about. We don't fixate it, and we don't go to it to try to change it, move it, overcome it, fix it. We're actually just being with it, letting it reveal itself. And what I find is then the emotion will give way to its more non-local essence, where it may open us to other parts of our body, even our whole body. And now we're feeling our whole body involved with the emotion. That liberates insight that was contained in the emotion that's going to help us integrate it and move through it, responding appropriately with whatever we're needing to do. So yes, first, like anything else, it can feel localized, but we're giving it that moment to reveal itself in its more unlocalized feature. And ultimately, like with sensation, we can recognize how an emotion is unfolding in that vaster openness of awareness. And so we can have both a moment of resolving or integrating the emotion, finding an action we need to carry out, say, in the world or with another, and it can serve again as a sacred mirror or a sacred window into our vast openness of essential nature, where when we abide as that, while it too may first feel more localized, it expands to its infinite dimension, and we may feel our unbounded non-separateness with all of life. So there are lots of interesting doorways, we might say, here to be explored with emotions, but I treat the same thing with a thought's energy, an image, same thing, a memory, same thing. They're all at first a localized experience, and we're helping them unlocalize and reveal their deeper messages.
Richard, I wonder about the application of body sensing in situations of trauma. Can you talk a little bit about that? And
we want to understand that trauma often desensitizes ourselves to the body. We lose connection with it. So reawakening the body is really important, but we also want to appreciate that at first, as we open to body sensing, it may heighten our awareness of the trauma. So I like to think of we're titrating it very slowly when we're introducing body sensing with people who've experienced trauma. I've done major research with body sensing with major trauma. And even if we introduce it very quickly, it can have dramatic effects, helping a person integrate experience, sleep through the night. But basically, the formulation is slowly, carefully, step by step, so we don't re-trigger the trauma, help the person regain interconnectedness with themselves, all their emotions that the body may have stored in different parts of it because of the trauma. We want to come back and recapture those stored emotions, memories, and help them unpack. Because what I see is when we do, and body sensing is a very important access point here, integration follows, resolution follows, reconnection to body, to self follows, and therefore reconnection to the world, to the people around us. So body sensing is really the underlying factor, because if we look at it, an emotion we know as a sensation, even a thought we recognize as a sensation. We want to peel off the labels that we've assigned to a particular emotion like fear, anger, anxiety, and just meet it at its very primal sensorial level, where it will reveal what we need to do through this innate intelligence that's in our body.
You know, there was a point during the practice when I thought, oh, I'm feeling hungry. And then as soon as that thought came up, I realized, oh, it's just a sensation, or like maybe a dull kind of pulse or something, and it's not really hunger. And I thought about how we go through our days and maybe attach a thought or some sort of action to something that's happening in the body when that's not the case at all. So I really appreciate the potential of the very great potential of this work to help us really change course in our lives.
You're touching on theory of mind here, where we're learning how the mind makes attributions to what we're feeling. Oh, this is hunger. But it might be a misrepresentation. That if we're able to stay with the sensation and peel off the label hunger, we might realize it's something else that's not hunger, but that is activating, we might say, an associated feeling of hunger. Now we're able to break these two apart. The hunger aspect falls away, and we're with the deeper aspect. It's really important to notice how the mind so quickly labels as a way of trying to maintain a sense of control. But in fact, fear, anxiety, hunger is really just sensation. And this is really important when we're dealing with cravings like addictions. If we're able to peel off the labels that we're assigning to the sensations we're feeling, like pain, discomfort, craving, and meet it more at the energetic level, we can see ourselves through that moment of crisis where we otherwise might go to the substance or to the chemical that we would otherwise be using, or food addictions. And we're able to see a deeper movement here that carries us through the moment, and we don't get waylaid by the prior conditioning. So it's opening us up to these new creative moments that can help us through addictions. And I've seen this in our work with chemical dependent people who've gone through trauma, people who are suffering from different illnesses like bulimia or anorexia, who I've worked with. So really helping them to meet the body as sensation can help them ameliorate or overcome, transform these otherwise can be devastating symptoms.
You mentioned titrating and going slowly with this practice and addressing trauma that way in a controlled sort of experience of it. And I'd like to hear you say a little bit more about the 24/7, 365 access that we could very well have to this kind of healing work or practice. Because...
Well, let me address that first one, which is simple or slow and steady, which is I worked with this woman who had suffered unbelievable trauma in her growing up years through her family abuse. When we started doing body sensing, it quickly activated a lot of these old memories. So I spoke with her about that, and what we did in way of titrating it is, she, as we were doing body sensing, and sometimes with her eyes closed or eyes open, she'd raise a hand. That was my signal to stop, for her to open her eyes. We would actually talk about the weather for 5 or 10 minutes. We would shift the conversation. Then she'd say, okay, I'm ready to go back. And we go back to body sensing. So she was learning how to take it in measured doses that were helping her slowly open to this deeper information that she had lost access to. And it helped her over the time that I worked with her to heal through many of these memories of abuse that she had suffered. So titrating is really important, where we're working together. If we're doing it with ourselves or we're working with another, we're helping them feel in control of how much and how long we go in a particular session or a particular moment. And with her, while we were working an hour to an hour and a half segments, it was broken up into little 10-minute segments. So titrating is really important. Now, taking it out into 24/7, when I was first learning these practices back in 1970s, early 70s, I actually went out, bought a Timex watch that had one of these hourly chimes on it, and I set it on the hour. When it would go off, wherever I was, whomever I was with, whatever I was doing, I would just stop internally and take a few moments of sensing. Now, the person in front of me didn't know that I was doing that. It was a very internalized experience. But what it did is it helped me see, oh, I was getting so caught up in the moment, I was ignoring these body cues. So by accessing the body sensation, and also I was working with the breath, it allowed me all day long, hour after hour, to keep remembering. I think it's important in this work to recognize that forgetting is as much of the process as remembering, that we're designed as human beings to forget. When I really understood this, it dropped away tremendous self-judgment. You know, it was before when I would forget and then I'd remember that I forgot, I would have a moment of self-recrimination, or I got to do that better the next time. When I realized that forgetting was as important a part of my journey as remembering, and that I was going to forget at times, when I would begin to remember that I had forgotten, I came to it now with a new respect, a sense of awe and wonderment about, wow, look at life. It wants to forget and it's wanting to remember. So how can we build into both daily practice, but also as we carry ourselves into the world, these intentions to remember to do body sensing? And so if we need to use a watch, a daily chime that goes off every half an hour or every hour, so be it. These are helpful instruments that are helping us to remember in the face of our forgetting, which is going to happen all day long. So I like to think that I'm accessing my body sensing practices all day long. It's the last thing actually I do when I'm going to sleep. I sense my body, I let go of the thinking mind, I feel this radiant field of sensation. I take it in with me as I go to sleep. Before I go to sleep, though, as I'm sensing the body in this field, I'm looking for any leftover emotions, thoughts, experiences that are undigested from my day, taking a little bit of time with them to let them unpack, so that hopefully when I go to sleep, I'm not spending my nighttime working through unresolved emotions. I'm spending my evening really in a deep sense of rest and equanimity. It's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. As the world is waking up, I'm letting the body wake up a sensation and then carrying that with me into the day and all my activities.
You know, you touched on sleep and deep rest. Do you have any suggestions as to how we might cultivate deep sleep?
Sleep is such a profound aspect of our daily life. Without good sleep, we're not able to process our emotions, our daily life. In deep sleep, the immunological processes are turned on, cortisol, the stress hormones are turned off. The body starts to repair all the organ damage that has come naturally through our day. Repairs cells, our liver, our heart muscles. And as I was saying, in deep REM, we begin to process and work through emotions so that we can awaken potentially with creative insight. Body sensing is one way, because when we're doing body sensing at night, when we're having a hard time going to sleep, we're unhooking from this default recursive thinking. We're exchanging thinking for sensing. When we're going through challenging circumstances, the thinking mind gets very activated, and it may take a little bit of time to activate more the sensorial realm, and we'll keep getting pulled back into the thinking realm. So we want to keep a steady, movement when we're lying in bed, body sensing. And here's where I go very slowly. I'll start a person down perhaps in their feet if they're having difficulty going to sleep. That's far away from the thinking mind. I want to activate the sensation in the feet, then the legs, then the pelvis, chest, arms, legs, and head. If we go very, very slowly, what I see is people go to sleep before they get anywhere near their head. If we awaken in the middle of the night because of some dream or some activity, again, we can put body sensing back into practice. We need to unhook from the thinking mind, which is only going over the past and projecting the past into the future, but it's not going to help us resolve the issues we're facing. Even if it's a physiological issue of cancer or some bodily physiological issue, I've come to understand the effect body sensing can have. I've worked with many people in homeless shelters who have gone through dire experiences, chronic pain, chemical dependency. And I remember this one fellow in particular. He was recovering. He was in his third day of recovery. And he was in a total agitated state. As we went into the body sensing, and I went very slowly, his whole body just softened and relaxed. And he fell into a deep sleep, and he awoke from the body sensing, saying that's the first time he had fallen to sleep that he reckoned into that kind of restfulness in many, many, many months. Same thing, it's, as I said earlier, many people coming back from war, the first thing they report upon doing body sensing is they got their first good night's sleep. The main thing is we're deactivating this default network. We're stepping out of the thinking mind. We're stepping into this field of radiant sensation that helps us integrate the issues that are unresolved that may be causing the lack of sleep. The other thing I've come to appreciate is some people, they'll only get 3 or 4 hours of sleep and then they're wide awake, but they want the body to have more time for rest. Research has shown that when they're doing these practices, their mind, in a way, can be awake. In other words, they're alert to their surroundings. They're present and they think they're awake. But the EEG and the electrocardiograms and all the measurements are showing their body is in deep sleep. It's getting the rest that it needs. And this is called paradoxical sleep, where people's bodies are asleep, but their minds are awake. We might say they're kind of natural born meditators as a joke, but what I want these people to appreciate is your body's getting the rest it needs. Your job now is to relax your mind so it's not worrying, because you indeed are getting the rest you need. It's your worrying now that's causing the problem. So there are a lot of ways to work with sleep-related issues. The first practice I will always go to is body sensing, because it so quickly helps us out of this thinking, restless, anxious mind into a more peaceful, deep sense of equanimity and restfulness. Even if the mind remains what we might call awake, the body can still be in a deep state of sleeping restfulness.
I think we have time for a final question. And so I'm going to kind of try to ram it all into this final. So we hear a lot sometimes in this field, in New Age, practice, I'll call it. Teachers sometimes say, okay, we want to ditch the ego, or the ego is the enemy. And when I hear you talking about being, experiencing, or being as, what was the phrase that you used specifically? You said practicing as if or as that. Was that it? Or being as? Well,
there's a sense that we can be in or we can be as. When we're in, we're still separate. But when we're as, we're losing our sense of separation and coming upon this undivided aspect of our essential nature.
Okay. Now, so where is the ego equated to separation from our essential nature? Can we have our ego while we're doing this, or is falling away or into the bigger self part of the diminishing presence of the ego? Is it one or the other, I guess, is what I'm asking.
A beautiful question, and such a necessary question. If we study how we're designed as a human being, we see that the ego is a function. It's hardwired. If the Buddha was walking in front of us and we said, "Hey, Buddha," he'd turn around. He would recognize that you were calling to him. The ego is a function that allows a sense of separation to be believed in enough so we can form social relationships. We can build cars. We can go to the moon if we wanted to. So it's a survival mechanism that has grown to form social relationships along with the personality and all these different body functions. It's crazy thinking to say we need to get rid of the ego. What we need to do is understand its place and how it appears and disappears. It's not present all the time. We're not going around all the time saying, I am. We're just going about. It arrives in a particular social situation, or when we start to get caught in these recursive negative past conditioned thoughts. These practices are actually helping the ego come to what I call its proper functioning. It's arising in the moment that gives a sense of so-called or as if separation, where actually no separation exists. And when we awaken these deeper core aspects of our essential nature that know no sense of separation, now paradoxically, we can, through our five senses, our thinking mind, and our ego structure, sense so-called others, other people, other rocks, other trees. At the same time, we're feeling the underlying essence that isn't separate. So we're living then in two worlds at the same time that have become integrated. An appearance of separation, but we know that it's actually a belief formulated as a self-representation by the brain in our mind. All the while now we're in touch with this underlying non-separation. When we're in touch, as I said at the beginning, with this essence that knows no separation, the other can never be enemy. The other actually is ourself in its own unique form. And we're relating to then its essence. So we're essence to essence, even as we're face to face in apparency of separation. And now we can respect ourselves as unique expressions. You're a very different personality than I am. You have different facial features than mine, different heritage, culture, family. So we're unique expressions. We can respect the differences and what I call celebrate the differences while we stay in touch with the underlying essence of interconnected non-separation. Now, if you and I come into some kind of difficulty or challenging conflict where we're celebrating difference, we don't have to separate. I can hear you, listen to you. You can feel heard and listened. You can hear and listen to me. We can communicate to such a degree we come to an understanding that is, I would say, enveloped or wrapped in love. Because this underlying essence, its quality is basically love that wraps and pervades every situation that we're in. So the ego to me is a beautiful expression of our underlying essential nature. It has its purpose. I'm not interested in killing it. I'm interested in befriending it and saying, hey, how can we work together here? And seeing that it dissolves at times, isn't present, and at other times it begins to formulate, but it doesn't have to take us out of our sense of non-separation.
Now, I know I said that was my last question, but you raised just a tiny little, just in a few seconds here. Are you also talking now about non-duality?
Yes. Now let's get rid of the word non-duality because it's a mental construct. Okay. But yes, we're talking about the practices we might say we call non-dual, where we're recognizing this underlying essence that does not know any sort of separation. And the beauty of the non-dual recognition or understanding is that it envelops and incorporates the view of duality. It has no problem. They exist or they coexist together as a unified whole. That's that ability to see a separate object, but feel the underlying non-separateness of the essence that has given rise to both of it. So yeah, these are what the teachings we know of as non-duality.
Okay. Dr. Richard Miller, we're going to wrap that all in love.
I like that. Let's, as I say, begin our day in love, spend our day in love, end our day of love. This is the way of love.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for all of that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank those of you who joined us for today's session. It was really powerful. Please note that the recording of this session is going to remain accessible for free for 24 hours. And if you wish, you can purchase the entire summit with lifetime access to each recording, transcripts from each session, and bonus gifts from our presenters. For Sounds True, I'm Christy Peoples along with Dr. Richard Miller, thanking you for being with us. SoundsTrue.com, waking up the world.